And we are live. Welcome to Next Gen Leadership. I'm your host, Jimmy Ryan. Today, we are talking to Gino Fronte. And what's up, bro? We're going to talk about P&Ls.
Argentina,
And
too. We're going to talk about Argentina. They play
well,
today
we
in
could,
the semifinal.
for all the soccer nerds out there.
That's
And
right.
but hey, this is about leadership. This is about branch managers, people that are aspiring to become leaders, team leaders, or people that aspire to be better at that. This is just for you. And today we're going to talk about P&Ls and managing them. And we're going to go into hiring, firing, how to run a profit, and what you have to look out for. But I want to open us up with. And I briefly said this to Gino as we just were off air, is managing the stress of a P&L. And as someone that's done it before, I, 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 I tend to forget sometimes how battle hardened I am and the ability that I think a lot of us have to have literally zero money in the account, and the stress of that where I can rock it just fine. And I think that a lot of people can. Is that the goal? No. Well, of course you want to have profit. But look, if you're just starting out, or if maybe it's 2024 and it's a freaking terrible year for production, things are going to be light. You're not flush with cash. Nobody is. So I want to open us up first and foremost with, how do you manage the stress of a P&L, whether you're a producing branch manager or not?
It can't be your focus. It cannot be your focus. It is something that you have to achieve. It's one of the things that you need to do, but you can't be focused on it. You have to focus on doing the activities and the things that drive revenue and cut cost. So if you do the right activities, you'll get the results you want. Now, you need to be hyper aware. So I'm not saying don't be aware. I'm not saying stick your head in the ground. That never works.
Right.
But I'm saying be aware, but don't be overwhelmed by it. You just asked how to handle the stress. Just know it's something we're working on. We have our goals, we have our metrics, we have our KPIs, we know what we need to do. We're doing those things, and then measure at the end of the month. How did you do? It's like anything
So
else. It's not everything has the same process once you really figure it out. Like no matter what it is you're trying to achieve, it's all the same process. Have a plan, execute, measure, make changes, do it again.
right. And I mean, KPIs, yeah, we got to be making a certain amount of calls. We have to have a certain amount of realtor meetings, financial planner meetings, business partner, whatever. As long as we're hitting those, it we should meet the results. But
Well,
what if
that's
we're
as a
not?
loan officer, right? So for me, it's totally different. As a non-producing manager, for me, it's to hold each loan officer accountable to doing what they said they would do.
Right.
And asking them if they're using the tools we provide for them. Because the truth of the matter is we provide a lot of tools. PRMG's got a billion tools. And sometimes we hear it's too many. Well, it doesn't matter how many we have. Pick the 5 you're going to use.
Right.
Why is it overwhelming that we have 7,000? Just pick 5 and use them well. And they're
Right.
really, it's not rocket science, right? It's Mortgage Coach, it's MBS Highway. Like there's some really basic tools you need to succeed. And it's our job as managers and leaders to hold people accountable to that, because that's ultimately what's going to drive the results that drive your P&L.
So let's move a little bit into hiring and firing people. So I am, let's just say, this is the context. I am a loan officer and I want to add on an assistant, okay? Or I'm a branch manager and I want to add on a processor. Or I need to maybe scale back. What are the things that you're looking at? Because by the time you need an LOA or a processor, like you pretty much needed one 6 months ago, and that's everybody's case. But when do you actually make the moves? What do you look for in the P&L to be like, okay, it's time that we do this?
Well, so I think we're in what I'm going to call a stretch market. Everyone needs to stretch right now. The loan
Yeah.
officer needs to stretch. The loan officer assistant needs to stretch. The processors need to stretch. Underwriters need to stretch. Everybody's got to stretch right now and do more than you want to. I mean, that's the market we're in, because the cost per loan is currently really high because the units are down. So that gets exacerbated. So I'm going to back up a step and I'm going to say, if you are not doing 10 loans a month, you probably have no business having any employees. Like it used to be 5. I used to say 5, but we're in a stretch market, right? And so if you're as a loan officer now, we could talk about work-life balance once we get out of this mess, but this is not the market to think about work-life balance. This is the market to grind, and this is the market to gain market share, and this is the market to excel. And if you're managing a P&L wisely, then you have to stretch. So look, if you do more than 5 units a month, or 10 units a month, and I'm going to sit in the loan officer's chair and I'm overwhelmed, I'm tired, all the marketing activities that I've done, I've got all these leads, I've got all these opportunities, and I'm not getting back to people in time. And now I'm frustrated and I'm upset and I'm like, I need a processor. I need help.
Right.
Well, if your company or yourself, if you've been in a dry spell for a year and a half and your company's lost money on you for a year and a half, you have one good month and you're asking for an assistant? I don't think so, bro.
Right.
Show me that you stretch for 3, 4, 5, 6 months and produce, or say, you know what? I'm so confident in myself. Cut me 20 bips, hire me an assistant now. No problem. Right. But it's a really hard thing because when you hire someone, it's semi-permanent.
I know.
You know, we're not hiring someone because you're going to have a good summer. What are you going to do October, November, December, and January?
That's the thing. You really are making a long-term commitment. And I mean, it's not only tough to let people go, you don't want to. I mean, come on. You don't want to hire somebody, train them, do all the things, develop a good relationship with them, and then I'm sorry, money's tight, but you got to go. I mean,
it takes 6 months before somebody becomes useful.
100%.
Like 3 months if it's somebody you've worked with in the past before because the marriage is already set, so it's easy. Which, by the way, in this market, I highly recommend rehiring people you like from the past that you've had to let go already, way over trying to hire new talent. Right. So we had about 168 people working on our team at Finance of America. And today we have 40 something. So that means I fired a good number of people in my life. And when I look back on it, I look at our roster. I always keep our 168 person roster. Of those, which probably 100 I would still employ, and 68 of them was just people that we hired because we were in a pinch. So you talk a little bit about hiring, depends on the market. So right now is actually the best time to hire that I've seen in a decade. You can get incredibly talented people for a very low wage just because they want to be part of the team again.
Right.
Now, you still got to have enough loans to bring on people.
Right.
But that's the reality right now is you could hire some incredible talented. There's some wickedly talented people out there without jobs right now.
So you're saying, look, you got to stretch. And if it used to be 5, but now it's 10, the profitability just isn't there. How about as a branch manager? When do you be like, look, I need another processor? Like things are not happening in a timely manner. And again, this is semi-permanent. Like
let's talk about margin because it all comes into play, right? So in my role, I control the margins. Okay. And so it's a really fine line to control the margins. It's you increase the margins as much as possible. That's not psychologically impacting the loan officer when they look at the rate sheet. They need to know what the waterfall is, what you're willing to do on a PE or concession in order to win a deal. Like these things, you have to have transparency in these things. Everybody needs to know, here's our target. Here's what we can do. And then if you need an exception beyond that, then let's talk about it.
Right.
But know where you're at, know where you can be. And if you come back to me and say, hey, just like I said, you could cut your pay. You could also come to me and say, raise my margins 20 basis points. I got this. I'm not having any pricing problems. I got full control of my client. Okay, let's go. Right. So there's a lot of ways to skin the same cat.
Right. And I think it would be totally wise of somebody that's listening to this that is really wanting to get the extra help to go to a non-producing branch manager or just branch manager in general and say, hey, cut my basis points, 20 basis points. I mean, like that sounds like a no-brainer deal to me. You know, I mean, truly though, because and I think most loan officers are this way. We're salespeople.
I don't know if 20 basis points is the right number. I just threw a number.
It's probably not. It probably needs
measured against the volume that you're currently producing. right? And so let's just say, and we'll participate in it too. So let's just say that a new employee is going to cost, and this is the mistake loan officers make, or even retail branch managers make. They're like, oh, it's just a $6,000 employee. I'm like, okay, plus workman's comp,
Yep.
plus payroll taxes, plus benefits, plus computer leases, plus. Right. So a $6,000 employee is really closer to a $10,000 employee. So in my mind, I almost always use the metric of 10 as a rough number. And yeah, I could grind it down if I had to, but it's going to cost 10. And it's like, okay, so let's say you're going to participate in that to 40 to 50%. And then we'll cover the rest if we decide to partner on something and grow.
Right. So you're looking at not just, basis points, but basis points on what? What's your average loan amount? And because if you have $1 million average loan amount, that's a little bit different than somebody with a $100,000 or $200,000 loan amount. And look, it pays to be in California, and not Wisconsin, by the way, in that particular instance. But okay, times are tight. So what are some things that people can do that maybe they're not paying attention to cut costs? Because you said you got to sharpen your pencil on costs.
If you're still playing man on man today, you're making a mistake. You cannot have single dedicated assistants for single loan officers, that unless they really are producing 10 plus units consistently all the time. If they're not, that doesn't mean you can't get an assistant. What that means is we need shared services, right? And I'm not talking about centralizing at the corporate level. I'm talking about centralizing within our group. And so let's just say I have one particular LOA, she's an LOA. She's working with 3 loan officers. Okay. So that reduces the burden on the P&L dramatically, but it's going to take a little bit of patience, because a loan officer might say, hey, I have 2 files ahead of you, but I'm going to get to it. Like, you got to be prepared to hear that in this market, right? Because we don't have the luxury of just having a bunch of people hanging around because we're making money hand over fist.
Right.
And people think it's just the units that are down. It's not. It's the margin compression too. Because if we had an extra 60 bips in the deal, by all means, I could definitely give you another assistant. So it's the combination of lack of units and margin compression that are causing the problems. So my advice is shared services, and I call it zone instead of man on man, right?
I mean, that's super wise. And if you're a loan officer that's doing, let's just say 5 units a month, I would argue from a workload standpoint, if you really are averaging 5, it means that you got 10 in the pipeline at any given moment.
And it means you're working on 30 pre-approvals.
Exactly. So, I mean, it's an understated workload. But when you say see the results of 5, like, can't you just freaking work on 5 loans? Well, you're not. You do need some help. But I mean, shared services, that's a brilliant way to go, which is tough to do. So how do you as a leader select this? Do you allow the loan officer to go out and be like, hey, go hire somebody who would you like? Or are you the person that's running the show on who do we hire?
We make all the decisions. The loan officer, it's our job. The loan officer's job is to be a salesperson, period, end of story. It's our job to hire the right person to support that loan officer. And I got to tell you, you got to look at 2 things. There's more, but you got to look at the 2 main things. What type of loans does the loan officer do? Right? Because the type of assistant that does down payment assistance is not the same type of assistance that does jumbo loans.
You're 100% right.
So type is super important, business style, so to speak, and then personality.
Right.
It's really those 2 things that drive a good relationship. Imagine what my job is as it relates to that. My job is to find someone and match them to a loan officer and say, you guys are getting married.
Right.
Let me know how it goes. Okay. So it's an arranged marriage. Don't
get divorced.
Yeah. It's an arranged marriage. And I'm also the therapist when each one of them doesn't like each other. But that's really the thing. And so you have to, as a loan officer, am I going to put more weight on, do I like this person? Or am I going to put more weight on, are they skilled? And ideally you would have both, but in a shared services world, that becomes more difficult because I have a person that I know is incredibly skilled, but maybe she doesn't personality match with everybody.
Right.
And
gosh, I'd pick skilled over personality all day long. You know,
You should. I believe 100% skill is more important, but if that assistant is speaking to your clients, personality becomes incredibly important. You can't take that away.
100%. And if you're doing a shared services approach, yeah, if there's somebody that's doing conventional loans all day, that's a different type of person than someone that's doing FHA or even VA loans. And I mean, if the person's doing FHA loans for this loan officer, jumbo loans for this loan officer, and conventional for that loan officer, that's too much. They're not going to be efficient. And you got to, I mean, that's a balancing act of trying to match, but ultimately it's good. Any other tips on just?
You just opened the door to something that I think we should probably talk about a little bit. Is this is supposed to be about P&Ls. We're going down the rabbit hole of hiring people, and we could talk all about staffing on a different day.
We'll do a round two. We'll talk. We can go specifically on that.
Yeah. I want to get back. I want to bring back to P&L a little bit. So a good rule of thumb is 1 employee for every 7 loans. Okay, full-time employees per for your organization. That's a good rule of thumb. One of the problems that we have right now is that because we don't have scale, if your processor has a bad month and she did 3 loans, okay, because everybody had a bad month and she did 3 loans, what's your cost per loan happen?
Right.
Astronomical, right? Mm-hmm. And there's no way you have enough margin to cover that. There's just no way to fix that. You're just overstaffed.
You're in the red.
Yeah. And so you've got to understand, like, what are the projections look like? So you have to be real with yourself and not be overly optimistic. You have to be positive, but not overly optimistic. And that's a fine line too. And so I think the one thing you have to take into consideration right now is a perfect time. Where is your staffing? This is the best time to evaluate. Where is your staffing today? And what if you're not at 7 per loan, how do you get there?
Yeah.
What cuts do you make? I'm a fan of create more revenue before cutting more. Cut the excess, but when you get down to your core, where most of us are right now, you're starting to struggle because of scale. So one thing I recommend, if you can, not everybody can at every company, but form alliances. Just because your branch can't afford an assistant doesn't mean that you and another branch can't form an assistance, get an assistant. Yeah. Form an alliance. You don't have shared services is not just shared in your organization. You could share with other people, right? There's third-party processing contractors right now. Mm-hmm. Use those services. Well, then that's pay to play.
And it's per loan as opposed to loan. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a really, really good tip I would tell somebody that's on the smaller side right now is move to a hired help third-party contract processor assistant for everything that's loan related, and then potentially hire an offsite assistant, somebody in the Philippines or somewhere like that, for marketing things that you're trying to get done. So, use the right people for the right things. And there's so many great people available for under $1,000 a month offshore.
Right.
That if you're not using that as a tool, the right tool to do the right things, right? They're not good at everything. But there's some things they're really good at. And if it's checklist type of stuff, that's what they're good at.
They're not going to verify your income, or calculate it for you,
So I would use offshore. I would use offshore help as the second one, right? So if we're starting to chunk this down, right? It's the 7 full-time employees maximum, ideally.
Per 7 loans per 1 employee. 7 loans
per 1 employee.
So 21 loans in a month. You should have 3 employees.
Yeah. Then you got to decide what each one of them does. But that's a whole separate conversation. Is making sure the right people are in the right places for efficiency. But when you don't have scale, it's really hard.
I think that's but this is a great time to evaluate that. So we have 6 full months of the year of closings. Take that divided by 6. What's your average amount per month? And if you have 3 employees and it's less than 21 loans per month, you're probably overstaffed. So like, I really want to I want to get into like hiring and firing.
Now I'm going to say I am overstaffed on purpose.
Because I believe in growth.
because we're
Right.
recruiting, we're growing, we're meeting people, we're doing things. I want to provide excellent service, right? So it's okay to stretch and hold on to someone a little bit longer than you think, or to take that dive at the right time of year when you're in growth. Now, I will tell you that right now, the reason I like this time to evaluate is not only are we halfway through the year, what I would look at, in fact, I have Kevin's running a report for me right now. We have our sales meeting today. And at our sales meeting, I'm giving everybody the report. Okay, last year through the end of Q2, here's what you did. This year through the end of Q2, here's what you did. You've grown 16%. Good job. Okay, growth is good. 16%, 16%. Now, let's look at October, November, December, January of last year. Let's increase that by 16%.
Right.
How much staff do we need for the winter?
And see, because you're providing accountability with what the numbers actually are. And I think that where a lot of managers get into trouble is it's a lot of times it's in a weird way based on emotion and what you think is happening, but not what is actually happening. I mean, how many reports do you run where you're surprised? Wow, I thought this person wasn't doing anything, but look, they're crushing it here, 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 here. Or vice versa. I thought this person was awesome, but it looks like they taken off the past couple months.
Yeah, we're
And
in the era of data, right? So the data is
right,
available. If you hopefully have a good reporting system and you're able to dig down to the data. But even if you don't have a good reporting system, use an Excel spreadsheet. Like, it's not rocket science. Look, you
I
need
would
to
talk
know
you out of it.
how I'm just saying, there's a lot of really great reporting stuff that we use, right? We happen to use Gallus. We used to use Power BI. I've used Power BI. I've used 100 different reporting systems. It doesn't matter what system you use. It only matters that you see the metrics that you're trying to track.
Right.
And so, look, the reality of the matter is, how overstaffed are you? And if you're overstaffed in summer, let me tell you, you're going to be really overstaffed in winter, like, for
Right.
sure. Now, and I know what everybody's saying. No, but wait, the rates are going to go down. We're going to get refis. Wonderful. If that happens, you hire someone a little later in the year, because there's a huge pool of people available on the market right now. We're not, we are for the first time, almost maybe only the second time in my career, we're in an employer's market.
Yeah.
Okay. This is just like a buyer's and seller's market. This is the first time that we're in an employer's market in a really long time.
Right.
And so take advantage of that in a positive way and say, I'm not going to grow until I can't stretch anymore.
Right.
And
the balance is really, it's weighing what is the future looking like, because I can get ahead of it, as opposed to being in the midst of a refi boom and you're understaffed and you got to hire somebody when there's chaos everywhere, which is just,
you could hire somebody like I'm saying. I have at least 10 people I'm staying in touch with monthly from my prior group that are already willing and able to come back at the snap of a finger.
right.
So you have to be prepared for that. You can't just start calling. Remember, getting employees is the same as recruiting loan officers. Like, you have to stay in front of them. If you're in charge of employee management, then you need to stay in front of the people that you really know, like, and care and want back on your team, and have them be ready. And I said, hey, I'm going to give you a 30-day notice when I need you to come.
My brother, we're over time. I think this has been excellent information.
We could go on for hours about this.
I know, but
barely scratch the surface of P&Ls.
I think that, but truly though, I think that this is just a good base knowledge that people need to be cognizant of. You need to know how to and when to scale, and scale up and scale down. And you need to be real about what's happening, so that you're not in a situation where corporate calls you and says, hey, you're in the red and it's been too long. It's better for you to make the decisions of staffing than someone else make the decisions of staffing, or
100%.
your numbers decide for you, and then all of a sudden you're in a tight spot. That's the type of stress you don't want to deal with. And Gino,
one thing I want to leave you.
Wrap it up. One last thing. Yep.
Variable cost over fixed cost as often as possible. Structure your organization so that the variable costs based on performance is how you pay people. Incent what you want.
That is super wise, and I feel like we need to dive deeper into that, but we will do it on the next next gen leadership. And I want to thank everybody for joining us today. If you have a comment or want to go deeper into something, please make a comment wherever you're watching this. We'd love to get back to you.
And if it's private, DM me, no problem. I'll help anybody.
Absolutely. Same for me. And I want to thank everybody again for joining us. Thank you, Gino. And we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.